Tragedy's Revenge, Part 2. William is sitting in the garage, coming to terms with what he must do. Hard choices must be made. Making his way back to where Miranda lay motionless on the floor, forcing himself to gaze on the scene he had created. Suppressing the mind-numbing horror of life imprisonment, he began running through ways to actually dispose of Miranda. Dispose. Dispose was such a nasty word, he thought. Move. Move would be more appropriate thing to say. He was thinking of how he would move Miranda. He wouldn't think of chopping her up. Firstly, there were no tools for it, and he didn't have the stomach for such a task if he did. Secondly, you wouldn't do such a thing to someone you love. Well, you could also say you wouldn't kill someone you love either. That's it, he said, as he went to the hallway linen closet and retrieved an old comforter. He would wrap her in the comforter, tape it here and there, and get her into the trunk of the car. Genius. Exhausted after successfully getting Miranda into the trunk of the car, William leans against the back bumper, catching his breath while the trunk is still open, when suddenly he swears he hears a light groan or sound coming from Miranda. He jumps and yells in pure horror. She's still alive, he says to himself in disbelief. He stumbles backwards towards the garage door, staring intensely at the body in the trunk, waiting for Miranda to lift herself up so he can beg for forgiveness and explain why she's wrapped in a comforter in the trunk of his car. But there was nothing. No noises or movements followed. It was surely his mind playing tricks on him. The pressure must be getting to him more than he thought. Secluded places to bury bodies is not a phone search option for Google, or any phone usage for that matter. William did make sure to grab Miranda's purse, phone, and double-checked all the items he recalled her bringing over in an Uber. There was a place he remembered seeing a few times on long drives. It's out towards the more wooded, secluded area. About an hour's drive east at this time of night with no traffic. Then afterwards, he'd keep driving east, get a hotel room in the next city or state over for a few days, leave his phone home and buy a new one. Tell friends and family he thought he lost his current one as an excuse, and that he had decided to take a drive and didn't realize how far he'd gone. He'd done it before. They wouldn't think anything of it. Thankfully, it hadn't started to rain like the weatherman predicted. It would have been comical, to say the least. In the shows and movies, it's always a thunderstorm, isn't it? Maybe if it did, it would have made the soil easier to shovel, also thought William. The drive seemed to fly by. Next thing he knew, he was pulling onto what could barely pass for a dirt road. Branches and leaves scraped against the sides of the car. William didn't even care if the paint would chip. After driving further down the dirt road, he pulled over and backed the car towards the small clearing. Standing at the rear end of the car in complete darkness, Williams listens. It's pitch black. The moon is covered by thick clouds. The wind spirals through the trees, rustling the leaves and sounds of insects. No vehicles or people. Barely any birds for that matter. William reaches into the back seat, grabs his shovel and begins to dig in the area by the trunk, mumbling to himself how he cannot believe he is truly doing this. One shovel scoop after another, replaying the events of the night in his head, replaying the aspirations he had for his life, imagining the look on his parents' faces if he was on trial for murder. It would kill them. What would people say about them? Look at them. They raised the murderers, what people would say. On and on, thought after vicious thought attacked William as he dug the hole for his life. Panting heavily, covered in dirt and sweat, and waist deep in a hole in the middle of nowhere, William stares up at the car trunk where Miranda lay. Did he love her? He asked himself. He would miss her smile, her warm embrace, the way she said his name while staring into his eyes. She did love him, flaws and all. Look where it got her. He really is the king of self-sabotage. Crawling out of the hole, dusting as much dirt as he could from his hands and clothes, William walks over to the trunk of the car to grab Miranda and place her in the hole, her new home. He wonders if he should think of words to say, like at a funeral. It would only be right, he says under his breath. Looking in the trunk, William reaches in and grabs Miranda around her shoulders, maneuvering her slowly to her left to get both arms underneath hers. when he sees her eyes open and she faintly mumbles, "William," while looking up at him. In complete shock and horror, he lets her go and she falls to the ground back first with a shallow thud. She moves a little more and says his name again, in disbelief. William's heart is racing at high speeds, his mind is spinning, his legs are weak and his head is light. William falls into the hole he dug, motionless and holding his left arm. William has had a heart attack from the shock of it all. Miranda had somehow survived the gunshot to the abdomen. As it passed through and missed all vital organs, it appears she's been passed out from the shock this whole time. She is unusually very squeamish. Holding her side, she pulls herself up and scans the area. She sees the hole, the shovel, the equipment, and William, motionless, down in the hole. Was he really going to bury her? She shouted, clutching her side in pain. She couldn't believe what she was seeing or feeling. How could someone who loved her do such a thing? Was what she said in their argument so mean she needed to die? The argument. It was all coming back to her. The argument, the fight, the cheating, the rage. Her friends and family would have never known what had happened to her. What would his excuse have been? Miranda grabs the shovel and begins to bury William. As she says, "You dug your own grave. Now lie in it." Tragedy's Revenge, Part 2.